The moment you crack open a can of condensed milk, you're greeted by that thick, caramel-hued swirl and a sweet aroma that can transform any dish into a decadent treat. Most people see it as a comforting staple, drizzled over fruit, wicked into dessert fillings, or blended into coffee. But beneath its creamy allure lies a journey that starts on dairy farms and ends with a tightly sealed container on your grocery shelf. And along the way, some folks argue there are hidden truths that never make it onto the label. Is it a timeless classic worth celebrating, or has the industry glossed over deeper controversies for years? Stick around and decide for yourself. Long before you see those glossy cans lined up in stores, farmers begin each day well before sunrise. In many modern dairy operations, technology has replaced most of the old-fashioned methods. Cows once milked by hand in small barns are now ushered into massive parlors, sometimes rotating platforms that can accommodate dozens of cows at a time. They're fitted with robotic milking machines that work faster and more efficiently than any human hand could manage. Some farms boast that they can handle thousands of cows daily, funneling an ocean of raw milk into insulated holding tanks. While this boost in production may seem like pure progress, it has also stirred questions about animal welfare, antibiotic usage, and even the environmental toll of high-density dairy farming. Before we dive further into these controversies, let's explore exactly how condensed milk is made. The raw milk, typically stored at a chilly temperature of around 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, is taken from the farm to processing plants in massive tanker trucks. Each load undergoes rigorous lab testing for everything from fat and salt content to traces of antibiotics, since some individuals can react severely to certain drug residues. Only when the batch is cleared does the real transformation begin. First, the milk is separated into two components, cream and skim. Specialized machines spin the milk at thousands of revolutions per minute, using centrifugal force to pull the heavier skim milk outward while the lighter cream rises to the center. The skim portion, still containing some milk fat, but far less than the rich cream, becomes the foundation of what we call condensed milk. This step alone can handle thousands of liters per hour, hinting at the enormous scale of industrialized dairy. Next comes pasteurization, a process invented to safeguard us from harmful bacteria. In a matter of seconds, this raw product is heated to a specific temperature, usually around 72 degrees Celsius, and then swiftly cooled again. Pasteurization nearly obliterates bacteria without significantly altering flavor. But from here, things get more intriguing. Loads of sugar are added, not only to satisfy our collective sweet tooth, but also to extend the product's shelf life. Sugar, it turns out, is a potent preservative. Some critics argue that while manufacturers tout sweetness as a primary selling point, it's this hidden function, preservation, that may actually be driving the industry's enthusiasm for copious sugar additions. Once the milk is sweetened, it heads into towering evaporators designed to strip out much of the water. By subjecting the sweetened milk to lower pressure and higher heat, processors remove about 60% of the liquid content, leaving that thick, spoon-coating consistency we associate with condensed milk. The result is a super-rich mixture packed with proteins, sugars, and fats that many consumers find absolutely irresistible. After evaporation, the milk undergoes homogenization to further refine its texture, preventing fat from separating. Finally, it's packed into sterilized cans or containers under superheated, pressurized conditions that eliminate any lingering microorganisms. By the time it's sealed and cooled, it has a surprisingly long shelf life, even up to a year or more. Now, despite this tight, streamlined process, there's a fascinating story behind condensed milk's invention. It dates back to the mid-1800s, when Gail Borden was searching for a way to preserve milk in an era without widespread refrigeration. Spoilage was a massive problem. People in cities wanted a reliable source of milk, yet supply chains were primitive at best. Borden's solution, evaporating water, heating the milk, adding a generous dose of sugar, proved revolutionary. Suddenly, regions that had never had access to fresh dairy products could buy condensed milk in cans that wouldn't spoil for months. Early adopters considered it a near miracle product. In a time when food safety regulations barely existed, this was a game changer. As word spread, condensed milk took center stage in some unexpected arenas. During wartime, troops could rely on it as a nutrient source that was portable, filling, and stable in harsh conditions. Rumors persist that governments stockpiled condensed milk to ensure soldiers had something both calorie-dense and relatively palatable. Some accounts even suggest it served more covert purposes, though few official records confirm these claims. Still, it is true that condensed milk cemented its place in ration kits and relief packages around the world. What started as a small-scale invention turned into a multinational enterprise, fueling food preservation efforts and shaping whole industries along the way. But the story doesn't end on the battlefield. Critics today point out that while condensed milk gained mainstream acceptance, the speed of its industrial production leaves unanswered questions about animal welfare and farm conditions. Modern dairy farms might boast advanced milking platforms, but some watchers question whether large-scale, high-output operations are truly prioritizing cow well-being. Healthy cows, some say, mean higher yields and better milk quality, yet antibiotic use remains a hot topic. Accusations surface from time to time, alleging that certain farms overuse medications to keep animals producing at peak levels. These claims are difficult to confirm across an entire industry, yet the mere possibility of antibiotic residues has made consumers uneasy. Beyond the farms, there's another, perhaps even deeper, set of issues looming. Environmental watchdogs argue that the condensed milk supply chain intensifies the ecological footprint of dairies by encouraging more production. Where smaller farms might have focused on careful, sustainable yields, high demand for condensed milk is said to spark expansions that require more water, feed, and land. Climate activists point to the greenhouse gas emissions linked with large herds, while local communities in some regions worry about diminishing water tables. In the midst of these discussions, fans of condensed milk might wonder, is this comforting treat overshadowing a bigger environmental cost? But that's not the only factor fueling debate. With each can brimming with sugar, some health advocates label condensed milk a hidden sugar bomb. One can's worth of condensed milk can pack a hefty portion of your recommended daily sugar intake in just a few spoonfuls. The industry counters that condensed milk is traditionally used in moderate amounts, drizzled over fresh fruit or as part of a dessert, rather than consumed by the cupful. That may be true for some, but you'll still see disclaimers from nutritionists cautioning people to treat condensed milk like candy, not a simple staple. Interestingly, consumer responses to these sugar concerns have not completely derailed condensed milk's popularity. Many sweet tooths remain loyal. Sales are still strong, especially in regions where condensed milk is a key ingredient in cultural dishes, from Latin American flan to Southeast Asian iced coffees. Even so, there's a growing movement pushing for transparency on labels. A handful of brands have started rolling out lower sugar formulas or using alternative sweeteners. These modified products promise the same creamy texture with fewer calories, though critics question whether they truly replicate the nostalgic taste that fans adore. Aside from sweetener concerns, there's another frontier: plant-based condensed milk. With so many individuals moving toward vegan or dairy-free diets, companies are experimenting with soy, oat, or coconut to replicate condensed milk's signature thickness. It's a new and evolving corner of the market, but early adopters say it's a game changer for those who miss the convenience of canned creaminess. However, even those alternatives aren't immune to rumblings of controversy. Purists argue that the flavor simply can't compare, and that calling it milk might mislead consumers. Some also claim that certain plant-based versions are loaded with additives and stabilizers to mimic dairy's natural richness, raising another layer of health and labeling questions. Still, the mere fact that these products exist signals a shift in consumer demand, one that major food corporations can't ignore. What's even more intriguing is the way big dairy might respond if public opinion turns sharply against high-sugar milk products. Are we on the verge of mandatory sugar warnings on each can, similar to those we see on soda labels in some parts of the world? Will there be stronger regulations forcing companies to reveal any antibiotic traces, even in minute amounts? Or could rising awareness actually help transform dairy farming practices, pushing producers to adopt more sustainable and humane approaches? Some say the condensed milk narrative stands at a crossroads of tradition and innovation. On one hand, you have the heritage factor, an iconic product that survived wars, revolutionized global logistics, and birthed countless dessert recipes. On the other, a rapidly evolving consumer landscape is demanding transparency, healthier options, and an ethical approach to livestock. One might wonder, does the product hold enough nostalgic sway to maintain its high standing, or will these controversies ultimately force a major shift in how condensed milk is produced and marketed? It's not just farm practices and sugar content that attract scrutiny. Even packaging poses a conundrum. Though cans are recyclable, the scale of production means billions of cans are sold worldwide each year. Environmental advocates note the energy costs of aluminum manufacturing, shipping, and recycling. Some push for alternative packaging, but the vacuum seal of a can is precisely what grants condensed milk its famously long shelf life. A shift to more eco-friendly materials might risk quality unless new preservation methods are devised. In the meantime, the mainstream approach stays the same, generating a trade-off between convenience and sustainability. Looking ahead, it's possible we'll see bigger changes than we imagine. Already, certain countries have begun applying taxes or tighter regulations on overly sweet or sugary products, aiming to curb rising rates of metabolic health issues. If condensed milk ends up on that radar, manufacturers might scramble to reformulate or at least add disclaimers on the label. And if antibiotic regulations tighten, the entire supply chain, from feedlots to milking stations, could face a shakeup. Some insiders believe these shifts are inevitable. Others feel the cultural attachment to condensed milk will override any attempts to rein it in. After all, it's more than just a sweetener for coffee. Entire generations grew up with condensed milk as a pantry essential, linking it to cherished family recipes and celebrations. What's certain is that the story of condensed milk refuses to stand still. The path it forged in the 19th century still shapes modern diets, bridging comfort food traditions with the swirl of public health debates. It manages to appeal equally to home bakers craving convenience and soldiers in remote postings who need calorie-dense sustenance. Meanwhile, critics insist we ask tough questions. Are large-scale dairy operations as safe as they claim? How much sugar do we actually need to preserve condensed milk? Should we reevaluate the entire process to accommodate newer, more ethical standards? Perhaps the key lies in moderation and awareness. Condensed milk was never meant to be chugged by the glass, yet it can quickly rack up alarming sugar totals. Factories, for their part, have introduced modern milking technologies, but they must also navigate concerns over antibiotic use and carbon footprints. These are not easy discussions, but they reflect a growing reality. Consumers today want more than a can of something delicious. They want to know the backstory behind it, the potential impact on their bodies, and the effect on the planet. Even if the mainstream conversation shifts, there's a corner of the population that will always revere condensed milk for its indulgent taste and nostalgic charm. In some cultures, it's practically a symbol of comfort, drizzled on bread, whisked into beverages, or forming the base of iconic desserts. That kind of emotional resonance doesn't disappear overnight, but will emotional attachment be enough to buffer it from the swirling debates on sugar guidelines, dairy ethics, and environmental stewardship? By the time we reach the end of this exploration, one question remains. Is condensed milk's cozy sweetness a timeless treasure or a product overdue for serious scrutiny? Maybe it's both. Its roots trace back to a brilliant invention that changed how we store and transport food, possibly saving lives in times of crisis. It's proven itself a versatile ingredient in world cuisines, bridging cultures and decades of tradition. Yet the swirl of controversies underscores a modern reckoning about food production as a whole. How we adapt, from lowering sugar content to investigating antibiotic usage, will shape the future of this cherished staple. As you reflect on this classic staple, consider the entire journey contained in each can. How dairy farmers manage their herds, how plants refine raw milk into a thick, sugary delicacy, and how the product finds its way into countless recipes worldwide. Think about the potential health impacts, the environmental footprint, and the passion that keeps condensed milk on store shelves generation after generation. Perhaps the next time you pour that rich sweetness into a mixing bowl or swirl it into your morning beverage, you'll see it in a new light. One that highlights both the incredible ingenuity of the past and the pressing questions of the future. In the end, condensed milk's destiny might hinge on striking a new balance, honoring tradition while heeding modern calls for transparency and responsibility. Whether the industry steps forward to address looming concerns or whether consumer demand forces change remains to be seen. But the conversation is already happening, and it's not slowing down. Maybe that's how this sweet, unassuming product manages to stay relevant. It's always been a little more complicated than it looks on the surface. Now, the choice of whether we continue to indulge blindly or dig deeper rests in each of our hands.